Hello and welcome to ITV News Meridian.
Tonight's headlines in the southeast. I lost my livelihood, my friends and my home. A sub-postmaster from Kent tells how his life was turned upside down after he was wrongly accused of stealing from his post office.
Opening up and looking forward. Getting the southeast Victorian railways fit for a new age of the train.
Also this Wednesday evening, why being a responsible dog owner is not only good for your neighbours, but good for wildlife too.
It's a really serious problem, so you can imagine, every day and every week it's really kind of mounding up.
And the show must go on. How the famous Brighton Festival plans to return in full for the first time since the pandemic. Good evening. A father of two, wrongly convicted of false accounting, described today how he lost his job, his friends, and at one point even thought about ending his life.
William David Graham from Sevenoaks is one of hundreds of people found guilty after an IT system installed by the post office falsely suggested cash shortfalls.
Today he gave evidence at the Human Impact Public Inquiry, investigating the terrible effect the legal scandal has had. Sarah Saunders is outside the inquiry office in central London. What did he say, Sarah?
Well, Mr. Graham gave a devastating account of how he became embroiled in one of the greatest miscarriages of justice in British legal history. He spoke of his panic as money began to disappear from his accounting, unbeknown to him because of a flawed post office computer system. First £5,000, then £50,000. Huge sums of money he would have to account for and possibly be asked to pay back. He spoke of how he had been convicted, it became incredibly difficult to find work, and at his lowest point, he even considered taking his own life. Here is just a small flavour of the evidence he gave today.
I didn't have that money. I didn't have that money to pay, although, the helpline said it is your office, it is, you are responsible. The stress of this, I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't, I was worried about it every night I would go, and it was in the back of my head, where is it? What's going to happen?
How did your wife cope?
Stronger than me. If it wasn't for her, I probably wouldn't be here now. I would have. It got to a stage where I felt I just don't want to be here. I wanted it all gone. But if it wasn't for her and the kids, I just...
Well, believe it or not, Mr. Graham considers himself to be one of the lucky ones because he was not sent to prison as so many others were, and he lived to see his name cleared.
What is the scope of this inquiry, Sarah?
Well, it's not just about the impact on the victims of this scandal. They will also seek to see if there were failures by the post office.
Surely they've got to come forward and actually tell us what went wrong, when did they know it went wrong, and why they didn't just come out, admit there was a problem, sort the problem out and deal with it.
Well, that is a sentiment that's been reflected by so many people giving evidence at these hearings over the past few days, and the inquiry will submit its findings to government in the autumn.
Sarah Saunders, thank you. And you can find more on today's top stories on our website. Go to itv.com/Meridian. In other news, it's been revealed a former Sussex police officer resigned after pursuing inappropriate relationships with 3 separate young women who he'd come into contact with on duty. A misconduct hearing was told PC Sam Bate, who's 26, failed to properly investigate a road traffic incident relating to one woman and gained improper access to police records relating to all 3. The allegations were found to be proven. The panel decided he would have been dismissed from the force had he not resigned.
The number of children in Kent meeting government guidelines for physical activity has fallen over the last year. A Sports England survey revealed just over 40% of young people are taking part in the recommended 60 minutes or more a day.
A deer had to be freed from electric fencing in Hailsham. A team from East Sussex Wildlife and Ambulance Service removed the electric rope from the animal. Luckily, it had been turned off and the deer was unharmed. He was then released back into the wild.
Beautiful animal. Now, it's been more than 15 years since the Access for All Fund was set up to provide step-free access to railway stations right across the country.
There's a lot left to do, but a major milestone was marked today at Eridge Station on the Uckfield line. Improvements there alone cost nearly £2 million. That money will make a big difference, as Tony Green reports.
Lift going down.
For the first time since it was built 154 years ago, people like Carl Martin can now get to the platform at Eridge unassisted. This is where the past meets the present. The station, used by the Spa Valley Heritage Railway and the Uckfield line, has had nearly £2 million spent on it to make it more accessible, and it's made a big difference.
To those that probably aren't reliant on a lift, they wouldn't see it, but to someone that relies on a lift to give them the access to the same amenities as everybody, it's so important.
It's 2022 and we're still making a big deal about actually everyone being able to use a train station. Shouldn't we be in a position where, the whole network is accessible?
I think it's really good that we actually make a big thing about this, because it clearly keeps focus on where we must continue to make these improvements. But personally speaking, I see that we've actually come such a long way. Had I had my impairment 20 years ago, I would have been so much more disabled by the physical barriers, whereas now I feel I'm much more included within society.
Constituency MP Nusrat Ghani and Rail Minister Wendy Morton came to celebrate the improvements for passengers.
Obviously there are stations around the country that are still looking for accessibility programmes, but today was about coming and seeing a programme that has been delivered and is making a difference.
Is financing more improvements going to be more of a challenge if people don't come back to the railway? There's been a steep drop in passenger numbers.
I think during COVID we were working from home. People have been working very, very differently. We will have to just see how that all pans out. But accessibility is still really important.
The Department for Transport's Access for All Fund paid for the step-free access. Efforts to improve Platform 1's cafe were supported by the South East Communities Rail Partnership.
It was very loved, and obviously we've got the Heritage Railway here who put a lot of time and effort in, but I think it was financial investment that was lacking.
Passenger numbers are a fraction of what they were before the pandemic. But at least now, some people can take the train here more easily today than in the last century and a half. Tony Green, ITV News, Eridge.
And staying with rail, the Brighton main line will close this Saturday for 9 days for major engineering works. Replacement buses and a temporary train service between Brighton and London Victoria using a diverted route will be in place.
Businesses in Folkestone and Hythe will soon be able to apply for grants to invest in more energy-efficient equipment. The District Council's Green Grant Scheme aims to help firms improve their carbon footprint with funds of up to £25,000 available.
If you're in Ada and Worthing and planning a street party to celebrate the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, you won't have to pay any fees for road closures. The council has waived the usual cost between Thursday the 2nd and Sunday the 5th of June to encourage communities to come together and celebrate during the extended bank holiday weekend.
Now, elderly and vulnerable people in West Sussex are being offered free devices to help stop nuisance calls. To qualify for a call blocker from trading standards, residents need to regularly receive nuisance calls and have care or support needs due to factors such as age, mobility or mental health.
You're watching ITV News in the Meridian region. Coming up, being a good dog owner, why there's still plenty to do to get the message across to everyone.
And the Festival by the Sea, why Brighton's ready to welcome back the tourists once more.
And you can find more on today's top stories in the region throughout the day on our website. Go to itv.com/Meridian. You can call us on 0808 1010 095. And remember, you can also follow us on Facebook and on Twitter.
Now be prepared for possible disruption. That's the warning from Kent County Council about expected bad weather.
Storm Eunice is scheduled to hit the southeast on Friday with gusts reaching up to 80 miles per hour.
Well, Tom Savidis is live at the Bedgebury National Pine-Eaton Forest on the Kent-Sussex border. And Tom, what precautions are being taken there?
Well, they're taking no chances here, and it's no surprise that they're closing the site on Friday and Saturday. That's because there are more than 11,000 trees here, most of those pine trees, and there is a risk that some could come down in those predicted strong winds later this week. In fact, we could see heavy gusts like the ones we saw back in December 2020 when Storm Bella hit parts of the southeast.
There can be damage to property, there can be damage to people. So if people are passing through the forest at the time of the event, there can also be further injury from windblown trees because of the pressure that can be released as part of the trees.
Well, it's not just the National Pine-Eaton taking precautions. Ferry operators are warning of potential disruption across the channel. And those running our roads and our motorways are also urging motorists to be on their guard and also be mindful of the bad weather.
We have increased our resource, so we will have more tree surgeons available if there are branches down. We'll have more call-out crews if there's debris across roads, etc., etc. And we'll have more staff on standby to take calls and deal with any incidents where possible.
Well, at the moment, the north of England is taking a bit of a battering with Storm Dudley. But by the end of the week, it's expected that southern England will follow suit.
Not looking forward to that day. Tom, thank you very much indeed. And of course, we'll bring you the full forecast in a few minutes with Philippa.
And the ITV Evening News continues with the national and international news at 6:30. Here's Mary Nightingale.
Every child aged between 5 and 11 will now be offered a COVID jab in England. It's a decision that's already been made in Scotland and Wales. But what do parents make of the move? We'll have the very latest on the cash for honours allegations linked to Prince Charles's charity. And warning, Storm Dudley could be a danger to life. Do join me for those stories and more at 6:30.
Thank you, Mary. Now, we know with the pandemic and lockdowns, there's been a huge increase in dog ownership. But new environmental research shows an increase in canine waste in the countryside is damaging local ecosystems.
Yes, indeed. So the message to pet owners is please pick up your dog's poo, no matter how remote the location. With more on this, here's Nick Smith.
The vast majority of dog owners would say they are considerate and always clear up after their pets when out and about. But sometimes standards slip and waste is left to pollute the surroundings. For dog walkers on the beach in Deal in Kent, some say it can be a big problem in their local neighbourhoods.
I do get frustrated when people don't pick up. I don't understand why you don't pick up after your dog. It's part of being an owner.
I mean, we have lots of bins along here, but there are some places there aren't any, and if people are going to have to carry a bag of poo, I don't think they're always happy to do that.
It's a problem when people don't pick it up or leave it on trees.
It is a problem, really, especially because when you see children on their bicycles and disabled people and they go through it, it's all on the wheels and it's really not very nice.
Dog fouling can be a serious problem in our local parks and beauty spots, and there's nothing more frustrating than when someone doesn't clean up after their pets. Now, not only is it unsightly and pretty unhygienic, it can also have a serious impact on the local environment.
New research by scientists suggests significant amounts of phosphorus and nitrogen found in dog faeces and urine can result in over-fertilisation of the ground. having a knock-on effect on the native plant and animal life, which built our ecosystems long before we adopted our four-legged friends.
At first hand, it sounds like a good thing because nitrogen is a natural fertilizer, so plants start to grow taller and quicker. But this is actually causing a biodiversity loss because there's only a few species that can really benefit from this additional nitrogen and phosphorus. Really dominant species like grasses and nettles, and they will start to outcompete other plants. So you will lose the vulnerable plants and the smaller plants that have flowers at the expense of these dominant plants.
Walkers in remote locations may be tempted to leave dog waste thinking it's okay, as others are unlikely to tread in it. But conservation charities say fragile habitats like this chalk grassland can be severely damaged by any sudden influx of nitrogen in the faeces penetrating the soil.
For really special nature reserves, it's a really serious problem, and this is a really popular spot for dog walkers, so you can imagine, every day and every week it's really kind of mounding up and really makes a difference to the whole system. So these areas, these nature reserves, which are so important for our wildlife, and we really need to do more to protect them and to encourage people to take the dog waste away with them.
While representatives of the Kennel Club, which campaigns for dog welfare across the UK, feel that owners should be relied on to act responsibly with their dogs, and the vast majority do.
Having looked at that research in some detail, I mean, it certainly draws some quite strong conclusions, and we have seen other studies which actually say the impact is less severe actually. The majority of the impact seems to be around dog poo and people not picking up dog poo. And if people actually are picking up their dog poo, then the impact is very much minimised actually.
One of the joys of dog ownership is enjoying nature whilst out walking them. So the advice is to clean up their mess in these beauty spots if you want to keep enjoying their splendour. Nick Smith, ITV News.
Do you know, it is a real bugbear of mine. I've got two dogs and I think you have to pick up, so I really don't like seeing it on the pavement. And it's even worse when your dog decides to roll in it, as mine did this morning. Not pleasant at all, so do please pick up.
Yeah, I think we all agree with you, and actually so do our viewers, because we asked you for your thoughts on cleaning up after your dog.
Yeah, and Charlie Bailey from Upfield said, if you don't want to have to pick it up when you take your pooch for a walk, don't have a dog, then you won't have to do it. Simple, really.
Debbie Richards from Chatham said, we always pick up our dog poo. Where we live, there are lots of people who don't, and it is disgusting.
Yeah, and now Matt Chilman from Ashford said, so many don't care. I see it on the school run very often.
Meanwhile, Tracy McWeeny from Dover said, I think most dog owners are responsible, but as in all walks of life, there are people who don't care. I don't think you will ever change them.
Yeah, some good points there. Thank you very much to all of you for getting in contact with us. Now, the Brighton Festival will return to its pre-pandemic scale and capacity this year with a theme of rebuilding, a chance to reflect on the challenges faced across the world over the last 2 years.
More than 150 events will take place in Sussex in May, and for the first time in its history, there will be not one, but two guest directors. Charlotte Wilkins explains.
I have lived all my life here in Homs, the third biggest city in Syria. As an architect, I was observing the demise of this once quiet and calm place through the lens of my own craft, architecture.
Worlds apart, one united vision. Brighton artistic director Tristan Sharps reached out to Syrian architect and writer Marwa Al-Sabini after being inspired by her first book, The Battle for Home. The pair, who share a passion for architecture and the impact it has on human life, are now to become the festival's first ever co-directors.
Guest directors are different every festival, and they bring their own special inspiration to the festival, which is really wonderful to see. The festival shift and change according to each person, or in this case, both of our guest directors' inspiration. But this year, we particularly wanted to emphasise the connection internationally that Brighton has, but also its importance locally and the creativity that lives here every day of the year. So I think the combination of Marwa and Tristan this year is particularly special.
Yeah, well, architecture is a big part of my work. I mean, it's a big influence. I would say I'm probably not a traditional theatre maker. I'm really interested in putting lots of different things into the pot. So there's areas there where I really overlap in practice with what Marwa does. So for us, there's a common language that we've just quite naturally fallen into. So it's just been a pleasure working with her, and it's just so easy.
This year, the festival explores the theme of rebuilding.
My country wasn't always a place of war, but the issue of rebuilding is pressing. How to rebuild is a global question now, in which all of us have a role to play.
After a socially distanced, scaled-down event last year, the organisers are pleased to be welcoming back audiences to watch over 150 shows in a variety of unique locations. And the much-loved Children's Parade will once again return to the city's streets to kick off the festival on the 7th of May. Charlotte Wilkins, ITV News, Brighton.
Looks absolutely amazing, doesn't it? And it's so good we've got things to look forward to now. Although something I don't think we are going to be looking forward to is the weather that's coming up. Pip is here now, and you've come down with the latest information on Friday's storm, which doesn't look good.
It doesn't look good. No, of course, we've had Storm Dudley tracking across northern parts of the UK today, and we have felt some effects of it down here. It's been quite a windy day all round, but nothing compared to the potential strong winds that we could see on Friday, courtesy of Storm Eunice. Now, the Met Office originally had a yellow warning in force, or poised to come into force on Friday. That's already been escalated to an amber. So let's have a look at the warning area that we're expecting. So this is what the Met Office have issued, this amber warning covering a great swathe of the UK. Now it starts at 3 o'clock on Friday morning, runs right through until 9 p.m. Friday evening. But I think the peak of the winds for us here in the southeast will be around the middle part of the day, so a very busy time. Inland gusts 60 to 70 miles per hour, stronger still at the coast, perhaps as much as 90 miles per hour.
This is pretty rare though, isn't it, for here in the southeast?
It is, yes. I mean, we have to go back quite a way. We've had a handful of storms that have come close to those sort of realms, but it's these inland parts of southern England. We're just not used to seeing these sort of gusts. We'd have to cast our mind back to January 1990 in the Burnsday storm to see something comparable. But of course, we are all well versed in the potential impacts. Let's take a look at a few of those. So if things go as expected, we could well see some structural damage, power outages with power lines brought down, inevitably some disruption to transport, as we've already seen, perhaps delays and cancellations to ferries and trains, and also the potential for some flying debris. So do take very good care if you are out and about. Now, I also want to note, if you're heading to the coast, we could have a storm surge combined with high spring tides. Really treacherous conditions potentially.
It's not good. I mean, also the weekend, will it sort of blow itself out? Have we got it through the weekend as well?
Well, Eunice is moving away later on Friday, but the weekend still looks pretty unsettled. Still wet, still pretty windy, not as windy as we'll see on Friday, but all very unsettled. Definitely some good days to be probably hunkering down inside, I think. No gardening.
Good advice.
Great advice, Pip. Thank you very much. Everyone, take care then. Let's find out what's happening over the next 24 hours or so with the weather. Here's Pip.
Feels like home, whatever the weather. Valent Boilers and Heat Pumps sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
Some very disruptive weather on the cards to round off the working week. Then Storm Eunice on Friday, that amber warning coming into force, and gusts around the coast in the region of 80 to 90 miles per hour. But out there at the moment, actually relatively calm. We'll see any cloud and rain clearing away southeastwards, drier and clearer for most of us for the rest of the night. But it stays pretty windy, and that wind in turn keeping the temperatures up. So a frost-free night all round, lows of 6 or 7 Celsius for many. Tomorrow then, a bright and a breezy start to the day, plenty of sunshine first thing. We'll see a bit more cloud drifting in from the west as the day wears on, perhaps 1 or 2 further showery outbreaks. But tomorrow really is the calmer weather before the storm, because that Storm Eunice arrives overnight into Friday. The rain comes first, fairly heavy and persistent for a time, clearing through most parts by dawn, and then those strong winds really take a hold. As I said, 60 to 70 mile per hour gusts inland, 80 to 90 mile per hour gusts around the coast. Combine that with high tides and a potential storm surge, and it really is going to be a pretty nasty day, and in fact staying pretty unsettled through the weekend too, wet and windy again at times.
Valent sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
Not looking good, is it?
Really isn't. OK, in just a moment, the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale.
And you will have your late news at 10:30, and we'll be back with you tomorrow. Have a good evening. Take care. Bye-bye.
Good night.